Happy New Year, folks, and welcome back to #AskGSM here today, episode 371 for Wednesday, January 6, 2021. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. With all that being said, we'll get right into it, but two quick plugs before we do, I guess. I said we'll get right into it, and then we don't, but two quick plugs that I just remembered. One, my Keith Lee interview is up right now here on the channel for Monday. We talk all about his Raw arrival, debut, moving up from NXT's WWE 24 documentary, contending for the WWE Championship on Monday's Raw. It was conducted last week, so of course it takes place beforehand. But we talk all about his new theme song, his new attire. He had a ton to say about that. So check out that exclusive interview right now here on the channel for Monday. And if you're not already subscribed, first of all, what the hell is wrong with you? Second of all, you should be. And third of all, if you are subscribed, definitely hit the bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up, because in less than 2 days, first thing Friday morning, is when my exclusive interview with WWE Hall of Famer Stone Cold Steve Austin goes live, both here on the channel and on Bleacher Report, talking straight up Steve Austin Season 2 and so much more. So that's a great conversation, probably one of, if not the coolest interview I've ever done, so check that out coming up on Friday here on the channel. So with all that being said, now we'll get into the questions, starting with Emmanuel A. from YouTube. Their question was, I listened to your Year in Review WrestleRant podcast episode, and out of everything, Joey Janela, the most disappointing wrestler, surprised me. I was under the impression that as decisive as Joey Janela is, most of AEW's fan base agreed that his mid-card status suited him. His detractors were the kind who never expected much from him, and his fans recognized he's a niche wrestler. Of all the is X in AEW disappointing debates, I've rarely seen Janela discussed, or rather I feel like I missed those discussions if it was prevalent enough for him to win an award for it. Did I miss the discourse on people having big expectations for Joey Janela? Dude, you're as, surprised as I am. I'm surprised as you are in regards to Joey Janela winning that category for most disappointing. Not just you mentioned AEW. It wasn't just AEW. Those awards also consist of WWE and NXT. The people that I had in that category included Ricochet for the terrible 2020 that he had. Miro in AEW, whose AEW run so far has been kind of underwhelming. I had fucking Velveteen Dream on there, for God's sakes, who, we'll talk about him later because Emmanuel asked about him through Twitter. But I can't think of anyone else who had a bigger fall from grace in 2020 than Velveteen Dream. Yet Joey Janela was the one who won the award for most disappointing of the year. Of all, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and even AEW. That to me made absolutely no sense. So, I'm as shocked as you are. I really don't know why. It wasn't like he won by a slight margin, like a couple of votes. It was pretty significant. So I have no idea. I have not seen anyone ever say, oh, Joey Janela is disappointing. I've said before that I expected a bit more from him. I wasn't overly familiar with his work. I hadn't seen a ton of his matches pre-AEW. The early matches were fun, like the Lights Out match with Jon Moxley, or the Kenny Omega Street fight. That was another Lights Out match a couple of months later. Other than that, I can't tell you one single memorable match the guys had in AEW. And that's fine. I don't think he's that great. I don't think he's terrible enough to the point, like he's world champion. Why is he world champion? I think he's slotted right where he should be. So honestly, I don't have an answer for you. I have no idea why he was voted the most disappointing of 2020 for all three companies. But as Emmanuel said, we discussed all that and much, much more on the latest WrestleRant radio from last Thursday, from New Year's Eve. Alexis, RJ, and I discussing the Wrestlers of the Year, Matches of the Year, Shows of the Year, and so much more, as voted on by you fine folks on WrestleRant.com in the month of December. So check out the full review episode. It's about 2.5 hours long, one of the longest episodes I've ever done, because that also includes predictions for NXT New Year's Evil tonight and the tribute to Brody Lee after he passed away a week earlier. So it's a stacked episode, but it was a lot of fun to do. Brandon A., also from YouTube, their first question was, before that, they wrote, "What's up, GSM? I'm glad you appreciated my Christmas card from a couple of weeks ago. Just wanted to clarify a couple things that you mentioned. One, I did mean Scott Calvin as Santa Claus. I just used the name Scott Calvin to distinguish which Santa Claus I was talking about. And two, I included Die Hard as a Christmas movie for your enjoyment. My opinion on it hasn't changed. Alrighty, now on to my questions. So, the first question was, what did you think of the Brody Lee tribute episode of Dynamite? What were your favorite moments? I absolutely loved it. I mean, again, I discussed this more in depth on WrestleRant Radio last Thursday. It was probably the best episode of Dynamite they've ever done. And that's saying a lot because they've done a lot of great ones. This one was great for the wrong reasons in that this episode should have never even happened. I mean, you never want to see anyone die, especially so young and especially someone so prevalent on the show just recently. But they took the circumstances. They made the most of them. They put together a really touching tribute show. And you say favorite moments, I mean, it's not like it's a show I thoroughly enjoyed. I can't wait to go back and watch it again. Like, I'll watch it because it was such a good show, but not in the sense that, oh man, this is such an enthralling 2 hours. I was so excited by the end of it. I mean, everyone was upset and crying and stuff like that. It was a pretty emotional 2 hours, but I thought the tribute video itself was fantastic at the end of the episode. The touching tributes and the sit-down interviews from Moxley and people like that, Jericho, were also really well done. The matches were also, I mean, again, it wasn't a wrestling show. The matches were basically irrelevant. But they had the Dark Order in every single match on the show, I'm pretty sure. And they were all very good matches. They were all good to great matches. But I think if I had to pick a top 2 favorite moments, again, I don't really have a favorite moment from shows like this, but if I had to pick, one, the Eric Rowan, the Eric Redbeard appearance from his former tag team partner, Brody Lee's former tag team partner in WWE. I thought that was really cool. Was not expecting it and made for a great moment. And then when he held the sign saying, "Oh, I miss you, brother, I'll see you down the road," or whatever it said, was really, man, that was a tearjerker. So that was, I don't want to say a great moment because it was really sad, but one of my favorite moments from the show, I suppose. And then at the end, what they had with his son, -1, Brody Jr., with Tony Khan and Cody Rhodes presenting Brody Jr. with the commemorative, not commemorative, but I think it was the actual AEW TNT Championship belt. And they're just getting a new one made. I don't know if they're going to have a new one on Wednesday tonight, on Dynamite tonight. I don't know. But I thought that was really cool. So the whole episode was, again, great, but not for the reasons like the Sting episode was great. The Winter is Coming episode was great about a month ago. This was very good in a different way. And again, probably the best episode of Dynamite the company's ever done. So I absolutely would recommend that you check it out if you haven't already seen it. Again, it's not an episode I want to go back and watch anytime soon because it'll just make me upset all over again, but I thought it was really well done. Brandon's second question. I haven't watched WWE shows much this year because the product has been terrible, especially Mondays. I watch all the pay-per-views, though, and I'll give SmackDown a watch once in a blue moon. No pun intended, I suppose. I don't watch the current NXT, but I will. I'm just having to catch up from a backlog going back to 2018. Jesus Christ, that's a long time. That's now officially 3 years ago, which is even crazier. So I'm not trying to come off as WWE shill with these next 2 opinions that I would like your thoughts on. The first opinion is that I don't mind what has happened with the briefcase this year. It should not be a guarantee that whoever wins it will end up winning the championship. I believe actually more people should have failed as cash-ins. It shouldn't be predictable and automatic that Money in the Bank ends up converting into a championship. The same goes for the Rumble too, or any contest that leads to a title opportunity. It would make things more meaningful when challengers did actually win the chip afterwards, in my opinion. What say you? Listen, I completely agree. No one has ever said, oh, every single Money in the Bank winner needs to cash in successfully. If it's the right story with the right person and they clearly have a plan, then I'm totally okay with that. For example, I mean, obviously, Rob Van Dam kind of had to win, but he announced his cash-in ahead of time. So if he went in there, had a great showing, and lost, that's perfectly fine. You know, I thought that was perfectly normal. The first person to really cash in and lose by pinfall was Damian Sandow. The person before that was John Cena in 2012. I didn't have an issue with that either because John Cena didn't need to win the championship that night. It was kind of a waste of a briefcase, but they used it as a device to give Cena another title shot on Raw 1000. Again, they had a plan for it. It was a very short-term plan. They did that like a week after the pay-per-view. It was a short-term plan, but it worked. The Dean Ambrose one, I mean, again, they had him cash in that night. Bayley, they had her cash in that night. Alexa Bliss, same thing. Kane, I believe, as well, did that as, that he did that 10 years ago. So anyway, with the Money in the Bank cash-ins, what was I getting at there? Oh, with all the cash-ins, yeah, obviously from 05 up until, 2013, pretty much everyone cashed in successfully, just because it made sense for them to do so. I mean, some people probably shouldn't have cashed in successfully. My issue with the Money in the Bank briefcase is that, yes, Miz doesn't have to cash in successfully, nor should he cash in successfully, just because he's been booked so fucking terribly for the last year now, really ever since he and Morrison lost the SmackDown Tag Team titles in April. That was 9 months ago of last year. The guy's been booked like shit. So I love The Miz. I really don't want to see him cash in successfully. I think it just hurts the show even more, and Raw is already a chore to sit through. Drew McIntyre is a recurring highlight on that show. Taking the belt off of him to put it on Miz would be an incredibly dumb idea. But the thing is, with the current Money in the Bank briefcase, and I'll talk about this in a couple minutes because someone else asked me about this as well, the issue is that the last couple of years have been a complete fucking waste. If you have 1 year where we have like a current Miz situation where it's like, okay, they squandered it, better luck next time, the briefcase, at least for the men, because the women, I think they've all cashed in successfully. They've done a good job with the cash-ins. They've all made sense. With the men, it's been a complete and utter waste. Completely. I mean, it's not just the Miz situation. What bothers me about Money in the Bank is that the Money in the Bank briefcase should be reserved for people that they're trying to benefit. And even if they don't cash in successfully, they benefit from holding the briefcase and getting that title shot. Not every number one contender needs to win the championship. I completely agree. The Rumble's the same thing. The Rumble, sometimes people will win, sometimes they'll lose. It's not like, it really doesn't come down to, oh, they won the Rumble, they're going to win a WrestleMania. Drew won this year. Rollins won last year. In 2018, though, Nakamura and Asuka, neither one of them won the championship. 2017, Randy Orton, I guess, won the title. 2016, that wasn't for a title shot. Triple H won the championship. 2015, Roman lost to WrestleMania. 2014, Batista lost to WrestleMania. So, I mean, it's not always that predictable. It was for a while. The Royal Rumble winner lost like 10 years in a row, which was weird. Thankfully, we got away from that curse. But yeah, it's just that the last couple of years for the briefcase have been a complete and utter waste. I mean, the Miz thing is one thing. The Otis was a complete joke. The Otis experiment was a flop. At least when he won the briefcase. The Mandy Rose push was great. He should have never won the Money in the Bank briefcase. If they never had a plan for it, it was a complete waste. That would be one thing. But you go back further, and it's just a joke. Brock should have never won the briefcase in the first place. That was only to get the belt back on Brock. He could have come back and got a title shot. He did cash in successfully. That was more, again, of a storyline device than it was to elevate Brock, which, whatever. But, like, Braun did not cash in successfully, and he should have. He should have won the championship at that point. Corbin did not cash in successfully, but the cash-in sucked, and Corbin also probably should have cashed in successfully. You're not going to find a lot of people who will say that, but Corbin had a lot of momentum back in 2017. From what I remember, at least before he won the briefcase, the guy had a lot of momentum. I would have liked to have seen him cash in successfully. Damien Sandow did not need to cash in successfully, but they booked him like shit. It's not the fact that they cash in successfully or not, it's how they book these people when they have the briefcase. Miz lost the fucking Grand Metalik last week, got the briefcase back. It's like, okay, maybe he'll go on a winning streak now, and then he lost this week too. So it's just a fucking joke. It's not that they have to cash in successfully or not. The issue is how they book them while they have the briefcase. And what's the plan here? If the plan doesn't make sense or there's no plan at all, that's when I have an issue. His next question, my next opinion is that the PG rating does hurt WWE more than hardcore fans say it is. First off, the hardcore fans always complain that the show caters to kids too much and doesn't do enough for their adult audience. Second, outside of Aaron Rift and Cultaholic, I don't know of any other YouTubers or podcasters that cover the show in a PG way. I consistently hear praise for the promos in AEW every week from guys like Moxley, MJF, Jericho, and Kingston. I love those guys too, but they swear in their promos every week, and these guys are the best in the company. WWE guys don't have that luxury. Can you imagine the current WWE roster coming up with good promos each and every week on their own without the micromanagement and scripting? I honestly don't believe they would do better on a week-to-week basis. I honestly don't believe they would do better. Wait a second. He said, can you imagine the current WWE roster coming up with good promos each and every week on their own without micromanagement? I assume that's a typo, because you saying I don't believe that they would do better on a week-to-week basis. That's confusing. But the question continues. Even back in the Attitude Era, where wrestling was so hot, all-time greats like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin got to curse, use hardcore innuendo, and do things that stick up, like stick up the middle finger. They could use these things to fall back on if they gave a less than stellar promo that week. That is obviously going to play better with the largely adult male audience than a PG promo every week from people that aren't nearly as good on the mic. If the best in the industry have cheap tricks they can fall back on to get them through each week, how are going to... I think you missed a word there. How are we going to expect these newer stars to deliver on a week-to-week basis with less talent and even more television to produce? Not to mention the WWE creative already struggles. So we have to rely on them to become even more creative with more TV restrictions than AEW, with less TV and less restriction. I feel in a way WWE would be handcuffed even if Vince McMahon wasn't out of touch. Look at NXT, for example. They have the WWE machine behind them and several years of a head start, but AEW beats them in ratings every week, and they actually have good creative. Imagine what NXT could do with that extra freedom. What are your thoughts? I love you, Brandon, but there is so much wrong with your question there. I mean, it's almost unbelievable. To go to the beginning of your question here, about how, I don't know any other podcasters or YouTubers that cover their show in a PG way. Why the fuck would they? What 8-year-old that is watching AEW is watching Aaron Rift from NoDQ.com or Cultaholic or any of these stuff? I mean, I don't know of any 10-year-olds that watch my content. I mean, I would certainly hope not. The Solomonster, any other podcaster. That's because kids don't go out of their way to watch fucking WWE. Kids don't give a shit what you or me or anyone else has to think about these shows. They don't give a fuck about what Aaron Rift or Cultaholic have to say. They don't give a shit. So why would we cover them in a PG way? And really, that's all a matter of preference. I really don't think if any of those people, like for me, for example, at least I would hope not, but really anyone, if they don't swear in their review, it doesn't make it worse. That's really just a preference. I mean, swearing is like my second language, but I don't think, if I went an entire episode of this Q&A without swearing, would it make it worse? Would you want to tune in less? Maybe you would, but I think that at the end of the day, it really comes down to a preference. It doesn't make the content better or worse. I mean, go back to WWE in the 80s. They weren't out there saying fucking shit and using the middle finger. Not that AEW does that all the time. But they weren't out there doing that shit. And the product was great. Granted, it was a different time. The 90s were a different time. I completely disagree that having swear words and middle fingers and innuendo to fall back on makes the product better. You really shouldn't have that as a fallback. WWE does that as it is. WWE has a PG rating. You're saying that it hurts. The PG rating hurts the product. Dude, they go in there every fucking week and I hear the word bitch. Everyone ends their promo with the word bitch, and it's so annoying. I honestly wish they would do that less. There was a time where Cena was coming out in the late 2000s and he was talking about poop and stuff like that. That was fucking dumb. But having a PG show does not make the show worse. Maybe for your preference, but I mean, AEW is not good because they can say shit or they can swear or the inner circle flip up the middle finger. It's just, first of all, it's just a better show objectively than anything else WWE produces. And I'm not I'm not the biggest AEW fan in the world. I will call them out on their shit. But I don't think it's a stretch to say they had a better show in 2020 than any of WWE's, including NXT. And I love NXT. But I don't go into NXT expecting people to say, fuck you, or Johnny Gargano to go off on someone and flip them off. It really doesn't matter. It's how you make the most of whatever circumstances you're given. Vince really is the issue here. You said, I don't think WWE would be any better if he wasn't there. I completely and wholeheartedly disagree with that. I'm not saying it would be a completely better show. Let's say he dies tomorrow, that SmackDown's going to be the most amazing show ever. SmackDown, for example, has been putting out some pretty great content. Roman Reigns, I don't care what anyone says, as much as I enjoy AEW, and I like I just said, it's the best product going right now. Roman Reigns is the guy in wrestling right now. Like, literally no one else comes close. And I love Drew McIntyre. not Drew, Moxley, Kenny. It's like, it's not even close. Literally anyone right now, Roman Reigns is the most must-see superstar in any promotion at the moment. And he's not going in there. I mean, he'll say bitch once in a while, which I honestly wish he wouldn't do, because it's such a fucking crutch. I hate the crutches. I hate it. I mean, people thinking, oh, if the promo sucks, but at least you can swear. That doesn't make a promo good. If a promo sucks, the promo sucks. I've seen a lot of Inner Circle promos that aren't very good, but they end it with the middle finger, so it's cool. It's really not. Like, if it makes sense to do stuff like that, then I'm fine with it. If it's a blood feud, I get it, whatever. When you do it all the time, first of all, it loses its meaning. And people liked it in the Attitude Era, but just because it was something new and different and it fit the time. In 2021, I'm not tuning into a show to see that shit. I watched that ECW crap from years ago. Again, I'm not the shit on ECW, but I watched some of those old pay-per-views and they're fucking terrible. Some of them are really bad. And again, it's all preference. I get it. But they relied a little too much on that hardcore stuff. And yeah, they inspired the Attitude Era in WWE. I wholeheartedly believe that. But I feel like they kind of leaned a little too much into that shit, and it hurt the product overall. WWE found the right balance in the 90s in terms of characters, wrestling, and, the stuff that they were doing with the hardcore shit. So I really don't think the PG stuff makes a difference at all. Maybe a little bit. But AEW is not great. I really haven't heard many people say, and I honestly expected people to say this when the show started. I have not heard a lot of people say, since Dynamite started over a year ago, that it's a better show because they can swear. WWE, they swear all the time, and they have a PG rating. Honestly, it's not about catering to kids anymore. The kids aren't even fucking watching these shows. Didn't that stat come out a while ago that, it's 8 p.m. Most kids are sleeping by that point, for one thing. But it's not like back in the 90s where the show was so great, where people were staying up to watch the show. I know I used to do that. Raw is far from great nowadays. What kid would want to fucking watch Raw anyway at 9 p.m.? Stay up to watch whatever the hell that was on Monday night. Aside from the main event, which was really good. Monday's show is very disappointing, though. Very underwhelming. So, man, I love you, Brandon. I'm sorry, but, I just completely disagree. And, I mean, you're not wrong. But a lot of the points he made here about, they should be able to rely on the hardcore innuendo. If you don't mean that, then I'm not really sure what you mean by your question. Because you try to make a lot of points, and just none of it really makes a lot of sense. So, NXT with the extra freedom, again, it has nothing to do. Just if NXT, they came out this week, and Damian Priest said shit to Karrion Kross. Oh my God, it's such a better promo. Who fucking cares, dude? Who cares about that stuff? If you like that stuff, that's wonderful. But that doesn't make the show any better. I mean, it really doesn't. It really comes down to creative. And NXT's not a bad show. I think NXT's actually a very good show most weeks. And I think New Year's Evil tonight is going to be fucking amazing. I'll be watching New Year's Evil first before Dynamite. But not because they're going to be swearing or they're uncensored. I think we're past that point. I would hope that we're past the point of we're an uncensored version of this show is going to make it that much better. It really doesn't. If the product isn't good to begin with, it won't be good. AEW just has a lot of good characters. More things matter. More things make sense. The wrestling is great. They're just more consistent. WWE is not. MJF would not work in WWE, but not for the reasons that you're talking about. MJF might be the one exception. Because MJF makes a lot of crude remarks. He can't make that shit in WWE. But I think MJF, if they were giving him the creative freedom, not to go in there and talk about, whatever, all the shit that he said over the years to fans and all the interesting promos that he's cut since he's arrived in AEW. Not even that he would be allowed to cut those same promos, but I think he would still be a great character if they allowed him to be a great character. TNA was doing, after WWE went PG, TNA was trying to fill that void and be we're the hardcore, we're going to say bitch and asshole every single week, and it just felt forced and dumb, and it didn't make the product any better. If the creative sucks, which it did at that point in TNA, after 2008 and after around 2011 or so, then it's not going to make the show any better, even if you do start saying shit and asshole and stuff like that. So I completely disagree, but I guess to each their own. FD from Facebook, their first question was, with the recent indication that we've seen the last of Jay White in New Japan, and interest coming in from WWE, especially Triple H, in snatching one of the major top heels in New Japan, do you feel that Jay White is the perfect fit for NXT? If he agrees, and if so, how would NXT be able to book Jay White effectively, and could he potentially be future NXT champion down the line. Also, with Wyatt's exit, do you feel, who do you feel will be the future, or what do you feel, rather, will be the future at Bullet Club in New Japan? If that's the case, whether there's going to be a new leader. Your question isn't greatly worded here, but will there be a new leader of the faction? Could this be the beginning of the end for Bullet Club, considering Will Ospreay wants to cement his legacy with potentially the new top heel faction in New Japan with his United Empire? So yeah, with Jay White, he did fail to become the IWGP Heavyweight Champion at Night 2 of Wrestle Kingdom on Tuesday. He cut a promo like at their press conference after the show was over. I actually haven't seen any of the New Year's Dash results, and I think it happened this morning, so I'm going to have to go back and check it out. During this press conference, first of all, go back and check it out. He cut this great, 5 or 6 minute promo, if you can even really call it that. It wasn't a promo, it was just like him. I'm not even really sure how to talk. I'm not even really sure how to describe it. It was just really good dialogue, and he was talking about losing and what's next for him and blah, 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 and people don't care about him. He just said after New Year's Dash, it's over. He's done, which could mean a variety of things. Is he even still in Bullet Club? I thought he was. I don't remember. Maybe he's not in there anymore. So I don't know if he was talking about done with that, done with New Japan. I think he'll stick around. I think his line was meant to stir up interest among fans, thinking, oh, is he going to NXT? Oh, is he going to AEW? And not that even would be a bad thing. I just think he's such a big star in New Japan. Not that WWE and AEW don't have interest, because clearly they do. I think anyone in any company, and either of those companies specifically, would be fools for not wanting Jay White. Jay White is a great talent. I just don't think he's leaving. My gut says he's not leaving. I think it'd be really cool to see him on either NXT or AEW. Specifically AEW, I think NXT... So NXT, them going to NXT would be great. The real problem there is when they get called up. So, I'm not saying that Riddle shouldn't have gone to WWE just because of how he's booked and where he is right now on the main roster. I think he can overcome that bullshit and still become a top star. All these people feel like stars in NXT. You can really bring in anyone from the independent scene and make them a star in NXT. The real test is how they're going to be booked beyond that point. How they're going to be booked beyond NXT, on the Raw, on SmackDown, because it is very hit or miss. Very hit or miss. You look at a guy like Keith Lee, his main roster run has not been the consistently strongest, but the guy has picked up some big wins. He's been involved in the main event mix. He went for the WWE Championship in a great match on Raw on Monday. So, it's not like everyone who signs with them is going to be a complete flop. So anyone saying, oh man, he'll be buried if he goes to WWE, I really don't see that. I think Jay White, if anything, would be treated more like a star. Obviously he's a big star in New Japan, but he would be treated as just as much of a star in WWE or NXT if he was to go there. It's not like an MJF whose character is specifically tailored to be in New Japan, or MJF whose character who's specifically tailored to be in AEW. I can't see MJF going to WWE doing the same shtick. He's probably the one exception to Brandon's previous question about, would these people swearing and stuff like that. I don't really think WWE needs that. MJF might as part of his character. But as far as Jay White is concerned, I'm very interested to see what's next. I don't know if that's it for him. I have not heard any rumblings. With Kenny Omega 2 years ago, we all heard the rumors, his contract's coming up. Where is he going to go? He's leaving New Japan. Will he go to AEW? Will he go to WWE? I haven't heard that with Jay White at all. I haven't heard anyone say, he's leaving, he's going here. I haven't heard that whatsoever, which tells me that he's probably staying put. FD's next question. With how the Money in the Bank briefcase has been treated lately, with how The Miz is able to get the briefcase back after he failed to cash in at the TLC pay-per-view recently, do you feel this has been pretty much devalued, the whole purpose of the Money in the Bank briefcase? And is there any way to return the briefcase's legitimacy overall? So I just got done talking about this a couple minutes ago. They have completely wasted the briefcase. Not just this year, but really every year for the last couple of years. The Corbin one cashed in unsuccessfully. Okay, whatever. The cash-in sucked, but it's okay. Not everyone has to cash in successfully, I understand. The Braun one was a complete waste, because Braun should have become champion at that point. He was popular enough to the point where it would have made sense. But instead, they had to wait another 2 years to the point where no one gave a fuck about Braun Strowman as the world champion. Okay. You get to 2019 with Brock. Brock did not need the fucking briefcase. You look at the match that Brock won the briefcase in, Ali, Finn Balor. Corbin again, no thanks, but There was I think, was Bobby Lashley in that one? I don't remember. But there was a bunch of people in that match where I'm like, okay, this person was going to win. And they didn't fucking win. This year, or last year at this point, AJ Styles. Again, top guy. Does he need the briefcase? No. But he was out of the main event mix at that point, so he could have used the briefcase to get back to the main event scene and cashed in on Drew at like SummerSlam, or gone to SmackDown and cashed in on Braun at some point, you know. Or Aleister Black. I mean, the guy's been a fucking loser for the last year now. Had he won Money in the Bank, I think they, first of all, would have booked him better than Otis, although that's not guaranteed. And second of all, he could have really benefited from it. I look at Money in the Bank different from Rumble. Rumble can be won by, like, any already established top star. Rollins was already a multi-time world champion when he won the Rumble a couple of years ago. It's not like he was elevated to the next level because he won the Rumble. It made sense for him to win the Rumble. Money in the Bank, you can't have established people win it, sometimes like in AJ Styles, but usually I would like to see the briefcase go to someone who can really benefit from it in the sense that they can use that title shot to get to the next level. Wasn't the whole point of the fucking match in the first place to give someone a title shot that doesn't normally get a title shot? And again, that doesn't have to be the case every single year. But like with Otis, when he won it, I like Otis, but when he wins the match, you know there is absolutely zero chance that he's going to cash in successfully. So at that point, what's even the fucking point of it? You know what I mean? Like, if they're using the title shot to get to that next level, like if Otis was booked really well as a single star, cashed in on Roman, for example, and looked really good in defeat, it's like, okay, then it was worth something. He was booked like a loser. They put the contract on Miz, who's a better choice, but he also was booked like a fucking loser. So it's like, just throw it in the trash. And the fact they brought it back, I mean, the fact they brought it, this thing is like a curse at this point. Like, who would want to win the briefcase at this point? It's like almost a punishment to win this fucking briefcase. So they bring it back after Miz is booked like a loser. The cash-in was perfectly done on the TLC pay-per-view. He didn't have to win, nor should he have won. He cashed in and lost. You move on. But then he loses to Grand Metalik on Raw last week. This makes absolutely no sense, and I said this earlier, but he loses to Grand Metalik. Okay. He gets the briefcase back. So you're thinking, okay, he's the briefcase holder again. He's Mr. Money in the Bank again. He's going to turn his luck around. 2021 is right around the corner. Maybe this is the start of something new. He's got the briefcase back. He's going to be starting to be built up again. He might be a threat by Rumble, WrestleMania, and maybe he can cash in successfully. But then literally, it took them all of a week to put him in there with Morrison and New Day, and they fucking lost again. So it's like, clearly they still see Miz as a loser. So why would they put the briefcase back on the guy? And this is coming from one of the biggest Miz fans out there. It just makes absolutely no sense. It just makes no sense. So, man, it just, I don't get it. I don't get what they're going for. I assume he's probably going to cash in successfully this time. Because if he cashes in again and loses, which he should at this rate, then he's a two-time loser. So, I don't know. I really am just convinced they have no plan for it, and they're just throwing fucking darts at a board here. It really feels like when you watch these shows sometimes that you're playing like a video game, and they're simulating match results. And like sometimes you'll get a match result that doesn't make any sense. This is literally WWE 2K20 in real life. They are simulating the match results, and Miz just keeps losing and winning when he shouldn't. Like when he beat Keith Lee, when he and Morrison beat Keith Lee in a handicap match, that made no sense. And then he cashes in the contract and loses some more, gets the briefcase back and loses some more. Like, that's the only way I can justify it, because otherwise it makes absolutely no sense. FD's third question here. Goldberg has challenged Drew McIntyre for the WWE title at the upcoming Royal Rumble, and we are reminiscing another Super Showdown 2020 type tragedy incoming if Goldberg beats Drew there. Firstly, if indeed the worst will happen when Goldberg wins the WWE title, you said WrestleMania, but I assume you mean Rumble. If he wins the WWE title, could this lead to potentially the worst road to WrestleMania that you could imagine? Second, if that's the case, what will happen to the Universal title picture? And could we also fear the worst if Roman Reigns potentially being dealt a major blow to his momentum come WrestleMania season? I'm not really sure what you meant by that. What if he faces Goldberg? I don't know. Finally, considering ramblings from Vince himself saying that there might be a lack of challengers left for Drew to face, which is the reason for Goldberg's return, if indeed Goldberg wins the title of the Royal Rumble, will that potentially be the final nail in the coffin for Raw to ever bounce back from their current dismal ratings they are suffering from right now? And will this affect USA's TV management and their deal for Raw in the future? So I've talked about the Raw TV deal. I think John Ritland brought it up a number of weeks ago about how, do you expect them to make the same amount of money that they did in 2018 or 2019? I think I said no, but like the TV ratings, I feel like they'll still get a good TV deal anyway. Maybe not from Fox, but definitely from like USA, because USA Network has fucking nothing on their network now. The network was, I used to watch the USA Network before I watched Raw, because the network had so many good shows like 10 and 15 years ago. Nowadays, the network is just so bad. I mean, it is bad enough to the point where they've literally done, like 8 seasons of the Grizzly Knows Bad. They've done like 3 different spinoffs of that dumbass show. I mean, that just goes to show you how bad of a shape Raw too, but the USA Network is in right now. So anyway, I don't think Goldberg winning the belt is the final nail in the coffin. I mean, that coffin was already slammed shut with many, many nails years ago. Like, the Goldberg thing won't make a lick of a difference. It is an incredibly dumb decision, though. I do fear another Super Showdown 2020, although this time, going into that pay-per-view, where people were saying, there's absolutely no chance Goldberg will win. Clearly, The Fiend is going to walk out still the champion. I'm thinking to myself, I mean, this is WWE we're talking about here, and I could absolutely see Goldberg winning, and then he did. Here, I just think, would they make the same mistake twice? And I say to myself, yes, but it's like, it's Drew McIntyre, someone they've built up so well over the last year. And I guess they built up The Fiend too, but then again, I mean, they had the fucking Fiend lose to Rollins inside Hell in a Cell, so clearly they don't see the same amount of star power in The Fiend that they do Drew McIntyre, which is their prerogative, whatever. I just, the only way that this makes sense, and it really doesn't really any way I put it, but I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. If they put the belt on Goldberg, they have Sheamus cost Drew the belt, accidentally, intentionally, whatever. You could do Drew and Sheamus without the title. I think Drew and Sheamus has been built up so well for so long that I think it should be the title match at WrestleMania. Drew and Sheamus, does it need the title? No. But I think it would be a better title match at WrestleMania than anything involving Goldberg. And listen, I love Goldberg. I'm a Goldberg guy. We talked to him about a month ago. He's a great dude. I have zero desire to see Goldberg in another title run at all in the remainder of his career. The second one last year was completely pointless. Another one would just be, I mean, I guess last year was overkill. This would just be resurrecting the shit and then just killing it all over again, just because I have no desire to see Goldberg as champion. I have no desire to see Brock Lesnar as a world champion anymore. I have no desire to see Triple H as a world champion anymore. I am done with the part-timer bullshit. If you want to put them in top matches at WrestleMania, knock your socks off. But there is zero reason to put these people in title matches and to have them win the title. But I think it's a completely different situation than, because I know people are going to bring this up, than The Rock. Myself and many other people have said, you could put The Rock in a big title match at WrestleMania with Roman Reigns. And he's a part-timer. What's the difference? One, because Rock is the biggest star in the fucking world. Second of all, the story with Roman Reigns just makes sense. If Goldberg goes into WrestleMania as champion, it makes absolutely no sense. And any match that he'll have comes completely out of nowhere. The Roman Reigns match was completely out of nowhere last year. Goldberg and Brock Lesnar were world champions going into WrestleMania, which was the same case, or they were world champions at the same time in 2003. Why did we get that again in 2020? We didn't. We didn't need to. We don't need that again this year either. So I really don't want to see Goldberg win the championship again. The only way I could see him winning is if they have like Keith Lee win the Rumble. This won't happen, but like, they have built up Bobby Lashley so much over the last 6 months or so as part of the Hurt Business, where if they had him drop the U.S. belt to Riddle earlier on in the night, and then he won the Rumble, and we get Goldberg and Lashley at WrestleMania, I don't know if I would hate that. I mean, a lot of people might, just because, they don't think Bobby Lashley's that good, and Goldberg just sucks in their opinion. If we get a Bobby Lashley main event out of it, then maybe, but I also don't want to justify it either. I don't really want to give them any credit here, because I don't want Goldberg to win the championship. He shouldn't have won the championship the first or second time, definitely not a third time. No fucking thanks. So Keith Lee would be more likely. I talked to Keith Lee, I've talked to Goldberg, and both guys have literally said they want to face each other. So the match would be nice, but I don't want to give them any ideas here, because I really don't want Goldberg in another match at WrestleMania. I don't want Goldberg going into WrestleMania as the champion. It should be Drew. and it should be Sheamus for the championship, you can still do Goldberg and Keith Lee. And listen, you could do the fucking match, and Keith Lee can lose, as long as he's not squashed. But I mean, they could do the match, he looks competitive, and he can lose. Now, Goldberg doesn't have to lose every match that he's in. The nature of the character for a guy that went undefeated, I mean, albeit 20 years ago, but went undefeated for as long as he was, he and Brock just have a different aura than Triple H. Triple H loses a lot. Goldberg doesn't, he shouldn't lose a lot. Shouldn't wrestle a lot either, but he doesn't need to lose a lot, and he shouldn't lose a lot just because of the nature of his character. Because when someone beats him down the road, it's not going to mean anything. I mean, granted, Braun Strowman beat him, and it meant absolutely nothing. But granted, that match came out of nowhere, so that's a different story. So he should win a decent amount of matches, but I'll tell you right now, he doesn't need to beat Drew. To have Drew beat all of these people, including, but not limited to, Randy Orton, Bobby Lashley, Seth Rollins, Big Show, Dolph Ziggler, Keith Lee, the list goes on and on and on. AJ Styles, The Miz, John Morrison. To have McIntyre beat all these people, including Brock Lesnar, and then to have Goldberg beat said person is just, it's such a waste, it's hard to put into words. It's such a waste of all those people that they built up for Drew to beat. And I know Orton beat him for a couple weeks. Drew got the belt back. I don't see a case where Goldberg beats Drew and then Drew gets the belt back like at the next pay-per-view. I don't see that. I like the idea of Goldberg and Drew at the Rumble. I'm not in the majority when I say that. I don't mind the match. Goldberg just has to lose. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. At Iwagu91, did you see the last part of WWE's latest video tribute to Brody Lee? I did. If you're talking about the one they put up on their YouTube channel before Raw on Monday, I did. It was really well done. I wish that stuff would make it on the show itself, but they're still very well done nonetheless, and people should check them out. Second question, did you know that the Golden Lovers, consisting of Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi, are now the world champions in their respective promotions, following the latter winning the IWGP Heavyweight Championship this past Monday? Yeah, I didn't know that. I watched all of Wrestle Kingdom, my first time watching the entire show since, 2015, I think. I don't think I've ever watched the full Wrestle Kingdom, other than that one time 6 years ago. And I just figured I'd check it out. And they have 2 nights, so it was easier to watch. And it was a great show. Both nights I thought were really good. But yeah, Kota Ibushi's new IWGP Heavyweight Champion. I saw a picture of Kota. Maybe it wasn't Kota, but it was definitely Kenny in an in a New Japan ring on like some wrestling news website. And I'm like, holy fuck. So I exited out, and I thought it was like Kenny Omega arrives in Wrestle Kingdom. I'm like, holy shit. So I stayed off of all the websites until after I finished it. And I'm like, oh, wait, Kenny Omega didn't show up. And then they went back and I realized, oh, no, it said Kenny Omega congratulated Kota Ibushi on Twitter. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. But yeah, I mean, I think at some point Omega is doing this whole belt collector thing right now. Say Omega wins the Impact World title. Kenny is the IWGP, or rather as the AEW World Champion, the Impact World Champion. And Kota has 2 belts too. So going for Kota's Intercontinental and World Heavyweight titles would be fucking nice. That would be nice. It's definitely fantasy booking. That's probably not going to happen. But if you really want to introduce a New Japan AEW working relationship, that's how you fucking do it. Do you consider Lucha Underground defunct? I do. We haven't gotten the show in 3 years. I think it's safe to say it's not coming back. They don't even have much of a roster now anyway. Literally anyone who was left on that show at the end of the show by season 4 left. I mean, they either signed to the AEW, went to New Japan, went to WWE. I don't see the show coming back. At noob_n_code 1991, do you think WrestleMania 37 is the perfect place for Asuka and Sasha Banks to have their own WrestleMania moments? I mean, it's amazing. Sasha and Asuka are 2 of the best women's wrestlers they have in this company, and they have never won at WrestleMania. I think Sasha's like 0-5 or something stupid like that. Or no, wait. Yeah, Asuka's never won at WrestleMania. She lost at 34. She was in a Battle Royal at 35 and lost. She was in a tag title match last year, so yeah, she's never won. I don't know who Asuka would beat at Mania. I guess Charlotte. She definitely should beat Charlotte. They did the match. So yeah, it would be cool for her to win. You know, Bianca Belair winning the Women's Rumble, she doesn't have to win the title at WrestleMania. She can always win it down the road. I don't think Sasha's due a WrestleMania win. So Bianca losing to Sasha is not a terrible thing. So I'm perfectly fine with Sasha winning. But yeah, I think they both should win at WrestleMania this year, regardless of who they're facing. Do you think that Charlotte Flair's loss on Raw this week may lead up to a storyline between Charlotte and Lacey Evans at WrestleMania 37? No, I don't know why that would make sense anyway. I got more out of it that Charlotte and Asuka are going to have a match at Mania with Charlotte as the heel than I do Charlotte and Lacey Evans. Maybe a one-off match on Raw, but I don't see that happening. I see Evans and Royce maybe beating Charlotte and Asuka for the titles before I see Charlotte and Lacey feuding. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine and YouTube machine, check out his show, Real Honesty with John Ritland. First question was, assuming you've watched some or all of both nights of Wrestle Kingdom 15, what were your 3 favorite matches from the event as a whole? What match or matches did you not care for? I did watch all of both nights, including the pre-show. I thought it was a great show. Some matches were better than others. The top 3 matches for me were Cobb and Takagi. That's how you pronounce his name. If it's not, I apologize. Takagi, excuse me, not Takaki. That makes no sense. That sounds ridiculous. Takagi. That was a phenomenal match. I fucking love Jeff Cobb, but the match objectively was just great. So I don't know if that's number 1, but that was one of my favorite matches from both nights. That was on night 2. Obviously, the other 2 for me are Ibushi and Naito from night 1. And Ibushi and White was great too, but I enjoyed Ibushi and Naito more just because of the title change and the story. It was more unpredictable. And then Okada and Ospreay. I don't know if John liked it as much. I think he had an issue with it, maybe for that one spot. But I love the match overall. Those are my 3 favorite matches from the whole show. Matches I didn't care for. Tanahashi is obviously a legend, but his match with the Great Okan just was not good. This wasn't very... It wasn't a Tanahashi match, so I didn't really care for that one. And then the Junior Heavyweight Tag Team title match, I wasn't familiar with anyone in the match at all, so I just didn't give a shit. That was the only match I didn't really care for at all. That I just knew no one... I wasn't familiar with anyone involved. Second question. After losing to Kota Ibushi on night 2 of Wrestle Kingdom 15, do you think there's any chance Jay White is ousted from Bullet Club and leaves to go to NXT or AEW? Again, I haven't seen anything from New Year's Dash yet, so I don't know. Yeah, there's a chance, absolutely. There's a better chance of him leaving than like an Okada or a Tanahashi. I don't see that ever happening. There's a chance. I think he'll stick around just because he's such a big star for them. And yeah, he's done everything. Like, he's won the U.S., Intercontinental, and World titles. What more is there really for him to do? I think he'll stick around. I think it's all just one giant work. I feel like if he was leaving, we would have found that out by now. I'm sure WWE and AEW are interested, but I just think he's going to stay put. What are the chances Vince has Goldberg beat Drew for the title at the Royal Rumble? Also, if he does, who do you think they'll have Goldberg face at Mania? There's a small chance, a smaller chance than when Goldberg beat The Fiend, in my opinion. I felt like Goldberg was almost good. I mean, The Fiend was my pick to win, but I was like, I would not be surprised if Goldberg won. And I wouldn't be surprised here either, but it would just be more disappointing just because they've already done this shit before. To do it again would be even worse. You make a mistake once, fine. But you make the same mistake 2 years in a row, it's like you're just a fucking moron. There's a decent chance. Drew is still my pick to win, though. If Goldberg does win, like I said, the only two opponents that make sense, I mean, Keith Lee is number 1. Bobby would be cool, but I just don't see that happening. So Keith Lee would have to win the Rumble, which I don't know that he will. But I would rather see Daniel Bryan win the Rumble, personally. I just think the story makes more sense. So I think it would be Goldberg and Lee, and then maybe Lee wins the championship at WrestleMania. I think that'd be cool. I just don't want to see Goldberg as a part-time champion going into WrestleMania again. I know Dark is AEW's B show, being generous. But does it annoy you when commentary just asses off and jokes around instead of calling the match? I get having fun, but if they don't care, then how can the fans? Yeah, I completely agree with that. Dark is better some weeks than others. Last night's episode was a fucking chore to watch. There were some good matches on there, though. Yeah, Taz specifically, he's very hit or miss. I enjoy Taz's commentary a lot, but sometimes it feels like they don't take it seriously. And like you said, if they don't take it seriously, why the fuck should I? So, I don't know. Excalibur plays it seriously for the most part, but at least Taz is just kind of a joke sometimes. And he fell victim to that in Impact as well. And the commentary just became absolutely terrible. So hopefully that doesn't happen in AEW, because it seems like he cares more about this show than he does Impact, and he did Impact while he was with them. But they got to be more. They have to take it more seriously. At Jeremy8911 from Twitter, do you think Lucha House Party should be permanently moved to NXT? I do. I don't think they will, just because they beat the Raw Tag Team Champions on Monday, so they'll probably get a Raw Tag Team title shot soon. What the fuck ever happened to number 1 contenders matches? But yeah, I think they would be better suited in NXT. The main roster has shown they just have no idea how to use these guys, and they just have no... I mean, they just get with the fucking... I don't know. With like the piñatas, and it's just all this stereotypical bullshit. At least in NXT, they'd be presented as real wrestlers and threats. So I would much rather see them in NXT. I don't see that happening. Do you think Sami Zayn should turn face and help out Kevin Owens against Roman Reigns and Jey Uso? I mean, yeah, they never really ended on bad terms. So I think it'd be cool, honestly, actually, if Sami helped Kevin out. And then, I mean, this might actually happen. So what if Sami helps out Kevin, and then at the end of it, he turns on Kevin, the same way that Kevin turned on him back in NXT? That would be great storytelling. You finally get a Kevin and Sami one-on-one match at Mania out of it. No titles, but there doesn't really need to be, and it keeps Kevin Owens busy and in something meaningful, and he can beat Sami at WrestleMania. So I actually really like that idea. You didn't mention the betrayal part, but like Sami can go back to being a face for a while. Maybe they could both stay faces, and maybe you could be Owens and Zayn versus the Usos at WrestleMania for the tag titles. That would be fucking nice. I don't see that happening, but it would be pretty cool. Or if even Sami betrays Owens again, you can get Sami and Owens out of it at WrestleMania. Either way, I like that idea. Sami's no longer the Intercontinental Champion, so you can do that. After he gets his obligatory rematch with Big E and he loses, then you can move on to that. At E13A from Twitter, before Velveteen Dream, has anyone in NXT had a rise and fall in star power before even touching the main roster? Not that I can think of, but his fall from grace has been pretty spectacular. I mean, the guy, not that his stock was at an all-time high in early 2020, but he still had a lot of popularity left when he came back. And then he just continued to disappear, and then the speaking out stuff happened. Excuse me. And then his matches didn't really deliver. Even from a character standpoint, he just kind of lost all that momentum that he used to have. So, yeah, I haven't seen a lot of people. I mean, I guess maybe Sami Callihan. He was never positioned as a top star in NXT, but he had a lot of buzz, and they just never booked him correctly, and he left before he ever made the main roster. And there's probably a few other people as well, but Velveteen Dream is definitely the biggest example of that, because he had breakout main event, not main event, but like WrestleMania potential, and then they just dropped the ball on the guy, and then he dropped the ball on himself. So that fucking sucks, but that's life, I suppose. His second question: do you ever think the NXT North American Championship ladder match from Takeover? Do you ever think about the NXT North American Championship ladder match from Takeover New Orleans? There we go. And what's happened to each person since? So he shared the graphic. It was EC3, who's now gone, Ricochet, who's now been buried in the main roster, Lars Sullivan, Velveteen Dream, who are now problematic. Still with the company, but problematic. Probably not there for much longer. And you had Killian Dane, who's doing well in NXT, but he never really left NXT. He went to the main roster for a cup of coffee, got brought back down. And then Adam Cole, who's really the only one who's done consistently great out of everyone involved. So, yeah, it's crazy. And that match got 5 stars, and rightfully so, because it was a sexy match. But it is kind of sad to think about what happened to everyone involved in WWE since then. At Lay-In SmackDown from Twitter, do you think Stardom should name a title tournament, or rather name a title or tournament after the late Hana Kimura? Absolutely. I think that'd be great. We should be honoring her more. I know her passing felt like a decade ago just because it was May of last year, and so much has happened since then. We've lost just a shit ton more people, but they absolutely should honor her in some way. A tournament would be great. A title would be cool too. But yeah, I completely agree with that. At Arj_Marceau from the Twitter machine, I just got to breeze through these questions. What loss was worse for Bray Wyatt? Versus John Cena at WrestleMania 30 or versus Goldberg at Super Showdown? That's a great question, but I got to go the Cena one. With The Fiend, I think The Fiend is better now than he was a year ago, pre-Goldberg loss. The Goldberg loss, he surprisingly bounced back from. He beat John Cena, I guess, quote-unquote, beat John Cena at WrestleMania. The Braun feud wasn't great, but the Alexa Bliss stuff is the best stuff he's done as The Fiend so far, aside from those early Firefly Funhouse videos. The John Cena match he lost, it took him years to recover. Yeah, he beat Cena the following month, but who the fuck remembers that at Extreme Rules? Who remembers that? He was involved in the Jericho feud. That didn't really go anywhere. It literally took him like 2 or 3 years to get back to like a main event level position for a couple of months. So definitely the Cena feud. Like, he walked into that match, a star, walked out of it, like, why the fuck did they do that? You know what I mean? The Goldberg feud, I figured there was a chance he would lose, but at least he was already established. Bray Wyatt was not established in 2014. He should have never lost, and then he fucking did. His next question: how bad is it if this happens? It was a graphic of Roman versus Goldberg at WrestleMania with both belts on the line. No fucking thank you. I want Roman and Goldberg at some point, not for both belts, and Goldberg should not be a champion. End of story. It is pretty... I don't want to see them unify the titles. I don't want to see that as the main event of WrestleMania with both guys holding belts. No fucking thanks. At Golden Ace Rain from Twitter, what are your thoughts on Jay White? I already talked to this before, but I'm a big fan. I think he's great. he's really come a long way, because I remember him in Ring of Honor like 6 years ago, when he was on excursion from New Japan or whatever, and he was a part of some faction, not the Rebellion, but he was doing something with like the Motor City Machine Guns and people like that, and it was actually really good. He was good there. Never really was like a top star, but he feuded with Jay Briscoe for a while, and now he's like the biggest thing, one of the biggest things in New Japan. Maybe not the thing, but he's been a star in the rise the last couple of years, so it's been cool to see his progression, and I'm a big fan. I think he would do well anywhere he goes, but if he stays in New Japan, more power to him. His second question, who from AEW do you think could have a fun, stiff match with Shingo Takagi? The same guy who beat Jeff Cobb in the match that I mentioned earlier. The guy is great. I really have not seen a lot of Shingo, but the guy is really, really good. So any match with Jon Moxley, and he may have faced these people before in New Japan or whatever, but Jon Moxley, Lance Archer, or Brian Cage, I think would make for great matches. Just an all-out hoss fight. Brody Lee, if he was still here, if he made his way over to New Japan, which was probably inevitable before he passed, that would also be an amazing match, I think. After what I saw from Shingo at Wrestle Kingdom 15 Night 2. Who from AEW do you think would be a good match, or would have a good match, with Hiromu Takahashi? Hiromu's great. I mean, I've actually been familiar with him a while as well. He was also in Ring of Honor for a little bit, but he was also doing like independent stuff here in the Northeast for a little while in like 2015, 2016. I briefly met him too. Like I was talking to another wrestler after a show, and he like came up to us, like bowed or something, and like shook our hand. Or like he bowed while he was shaking our hand. Like you're a very respectful dude, very nice. I'm a big fan of Takahashi, but him versus Phoenix would be amazing. Again, we may have seen these matches elsewhere before, I don't know, but him versus Phoenix would be amazing. Kenny Omega, Pac would be amazing. Darby Allin or Matt Sydal would all be very good matches. At Scarlet One, we'll finish off with these final 4 questions. Best and worst of the Legend cameos on Raw Legends Night. Was there really any best? I mean, the Orton interactions with the Legends was cool, but like it never led anywhere. The Hulk Hogan McIntyre endorsement was kind of cool, but like other than that, what other Legends cameos really mattered? The rest of them were really the worst. Like the Hogan cell phone commercial thing was fucking terrible. Flair, I guess, served a purpose a little bit, kind of. I don't know. The whole Legends night was a complete flop. They really should have had like Hogan in the ring cutting a promo, which wouldn't have been amazing, but it would have been better than what they did to them backstage. I mean, come on. Have you heard about the top 10 people who worked the most amount of matches on WWE in 2020? Now, I did not know about that, so the list included in this order from most matches to least amount of matches among the top 10. Asuka, Angel Garza really surprised me, Ricochet, Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, Bayley, Bobby Lashley, Miz, Keith Lee, and Baron Corbin. Yeah, Asuka would make sense. She was all over the place. Garza, maybe because he was in NXT for the first few months of the year, I don't know, but he's been on TV a lot, I guess. He's been gone for a couple months now, so that kind of surprises me. Ricochet makes sense. McIntyre wrestled a lot. Rollins wrestles a lot. Bayley was all over the shows. I'm surprised Sasha's not on there. Lashley, Miz, Lee, Corbin, they all make sense. But Asuka makes the most sense. I mean, she was everywhere in 2020. Have you heard Hulk Hogan's comments about the modern WWE roster being cold to him and theorizing it's because they're not really familiar with him? I did see that. I thought that was funny. Typical Hulk Hogan. I saw that Big Swole responded to that too, and she just had a great response. It's such a Hulk Hogan thing to say. It's like, dude, read the fucking room, you moron. And I'm a Hulk Hogan fan, but it's like, dude, come on. You gotta know why they're probably not warming up to you, and it's not because they're not familiar with your work or because they think that you're coming to take their spot, brother. Like, just... I just laughed when I saw it. It's so stupid. What a Hulk Hogan thing to say. And best and worst of Wrestle Kingdom 15. I said this before, but I thought the Ibushi Naito match was great. Ibushi and Jay White was really, really good. The Jeff Cobb Takagi match was great. The junior tag team title match I didn't care for. Tanahashi and Great O'Connor I didn't care for. The Toriano match, it was the 4-way on night 2 was fine. Didn't really care for it. Matches I'm probably just forgetting here that I didn't really give a shit about. The Hiromu Takahashi match against, was it Phantasmo or something? I thought that was great. Takahashi wrestled on both nights and won both matches, and he was great. The Ospreay Okada match was fantastic. I'm trying to think of other matches that happened, but yeah, those are my favorites, and those are my least favorites from both nights. And that does it, guys, for episode 371 of AskGSM here today for January 6, 2021. Thank you, as always, for sending in the questions. Be sure to tweet me on the Twitter machine with your questions at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question in the comment section of this very video. I'll include it in next week's edition. Be sure to check out my exclusive interview with Keith Lee right now here on the channel for Monday, and stay tuned for the Stone Cold Steve Austin interview coming up on Friday morning right here on the channel and on Bleacher Report. Like the video, share the video, subscribe, share a comment, share the video, you know what I mean. All that stuff is greatly appreciated. And be sure to hit that bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up. Have a great rest of your week, guys. Happy New Year. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.